The city was loud in the normal way. Cars rolled through a big intersection. A train clattered past on raised tracks. A billboard showed a smiling pro-hero pointing at the camera. Two school kids argued about which hero was cooler. A street vendor yelled a special price into a small speaker, like he was fighting for his life against silence. A patrol drone drifted over the street and blinked a green light. A few people looked up, then looked away. In this world, safety had a schedule. Then the air changed. It started as pressure, like the moment before a storm. The hairs on people's arms lifted. Glass in shop windows hummed. The drone's green light flickered once. A thin line appeared in the sky, right above the intersection. It was too straight, too clean, like someone cut the blue open. The line widened, not with fire, not with smoke. It opened with a bright, hard white, like a welding spark that it didn't stop. People froze. A woman holding a grocery bag stumbled backward. Her bag ripped. Oranges rolled across the road. The tear split wider, and something dropped out. A man fell from the light like a stone. He hit the street with a sound that was not a normal crash. It was a deep udar that traveled through the ground and up into knees and teeth. Asphalt cracked in a circle. Cars bounced. A traffic light snapped at the base and toppled, wires snapping like whips. Dust jumped into the air and covered everything in gray. For a second, nobody moved. Then someone screamed, and the city remembered how to breathe. The man in the crater rose slowly. He was tall, broad, built like he had been carved from hard work. His clothes looked torn and wrong for the city, like battle gear from another time. His black hair was wild and thick. His face was calm, but not soft. It was the calm of someone who had been hungry and cold and alone, and lived anyway. He turned his head as if he was listening for a sound no one else could hear. A bus on the edge of the cracked street leaned too far. The pavement under it had broken. The bus began to slide toward the crater. People trapped inside pounded on the windows. The man looked at it. He did not shout. He did not panic. He stepped forward and reached out with one hand. His fingers wrapped around the front frame of the bus like it weighed nothing. The metal groaned, but the bus stopped. He pushed it back onto solid ground with a single, smooth motion. The tires thumped down. The people inside stared at him through the glass. Their mouths were open. No one cheered. No one thanked him. They were too shocked. The man blinked, like he expected something else to happen. On a nearby rooftop, a small group of petty villains had been watching the street, waiting for a chance. One of them, wearing a cheap mask and holding a stolen support item, saw the crater and thought, "Easy money." He jumped down, waving a glowing weapon. "Everyone back! This is my—" The man's head snapped toward the sound. It was not rage yet, but something in him tightened, like a wire being pulled. The villain fired. A bright blast hit the broken street near the man's feet. It was small by hero standards. It was nothing compared to what was about to happen. The man's eyes widened. His body went still. Then the air around him shivered. A faint green light sparked around his shoulders, like a thin flame with no heat. Dust lifted off the ground and spun around his boots. The broken traffic light's wires rose into the air like they were floating in water. People backed away without thinking. Even the villain stopped smiling. The man's breathing changed. It became heavier, faster, not like someone tired, like someone trying to hold a door closed with their whole body. The green light swelled for one sharp second. A pulse burst outward. It did not look like an attack. It looked like a wave. Cars slid sideways. Shop doors flew open. A glass window exploded into glittering shards. The petty villain was thrown back and hit a wall hard enough to leave a crack. The man did not chase him. He did not even look at him. He looked at the crowd, at all the faces, at the phones raised to record him, at the fear. His jaw clenched. Sirens began to wail from every direction. He took one step back, like he wanted to run, but did not know where safe was. On a high street corner, a pro-heroes agency van skidded to a stop. Flames burst from the exhaust as the door slammed open. Endeavor stepped out, tall and burning, his eyes locked on the crater. Hawks landed beside him a heartbeat later, wings spread wide, feathers twitching like they were ready to move people instead of fight. Endeavor's voice cut through the noise. "Everyone evacuate! Move!" Hawks didn't look away from the man. He spoke low, fast, into a comm. "Unknown hostile. No. Unknown. Force. Get barriers. Get med teams. And somebody tell me why the sky just tore open." Endeavor took a step forward. Heat rolled off him in waves. "You. Identify yourself." The man did not answer. The green light around him flickered again, like a warning. Hawks's feathers lifted, ready to shield civilians. Endeavor's flames rose higher without him meaning to, and the city held its breath, waiting to learn whether the stranger was a rescue or a disaster. Shoto Todoroki arrived with a rescue team minutes later. He didn't come for a fight. That was the first thing he told himself. He came because the street was broken, people were injured, and a man stood in the center of it like a storm that hadn't decided where to go. Todoroki saw Endeavor from behind. His father's shoulders were set in that hard line that meant control. But Todoroki also saw something else. Endeavor was tense in a way he usually wasn't. Not angry, not proud, careful. That was strange. Hawks hovered above, eyes sharp, feathers drifting down in small, gentle waves. They weren't attacking. They were moving people, guiding them away, catching falling signs, plugging holes in the chaos. Todoroki took in the stranger. The man's body was relaxed in the wrong way, like he was not trained to stand in a crowd, like he belonged in open land, where the only rules were hunger and weather. The green light was almost gone now, but the air still felt tight. Todoroki raised his voice, keeping it calm. "We're here to help. We want to get people safe. Can you understand me?" The man's eyes moved to Todoroki's face. There was no hate in them, just distance, and something like fear that had been turned inward. Endeavor didn't like the silence. "Answer!" The stranger flinched. Just a small twitch, but Todoroki saw it, like a dog that had learned what shouting meant. Hawk spoke quickly, but not harshly. "Hey, big guy, no one is trying to hurt you right now, okay? We need you to step away from the damaged area. Slowly." The man looked at Hawks's wings. His attention sharpened for a second, like he recognized the idea of a predator in the air. Then he looked back down at the cracked street. A child cried somewhere in the crowd. The sound hit the man like a punch. The green light flickered again. Dust rose. Todoroki felt his stomach drop. He knew this feeling. It was the moment before something got worse. He slid one foot back, ready to throw up a wall of ice if he had to. Not to trap the man, to block the street, to protect the people. Endeavor raised a hand. Flames climbed. Hawks's feathers spread out like a net. The stranger's fists clenched. And Todoroki thought, we don't even know his name. The decision to move him was not made by one hero. It was made by a whole system that had been built to handle danger. And still, nobody looked relaxed. They cleared 3 city blocks. Hawks's feathers guided crowds into side streets. Rescue workers pulled injured people away. Engineers ran quick checks on buildings. Someone in a hard hat started yelling about damage reports and forms while staring at the crater like it had personally insulted him. A police officer tried to hand Endeavor a clipboard. Endeavor didn't take it. The officer, sweating, turned and shoved the clipboard into Todoroki's arms instead. "Someone has to sign this." Todoroki stared at it for half a second, then passed it to a rescue worker. "Not now." The stranger watched the clipboard move hand to hand like it was a strange ritual. Then he looked away again, jaw tight. Ezu's people arrived with portable scanners and barrier devices. Thick support gear trucks rolled in. A mobile command unit unfolded like a metal insect. Aizawa arrived without drama. He was just there, eyes half-lidded, scarf loose, like he had stepped out of the shadows. He looked at the stranger and did not blink. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Not because he was trying to erase a quirk. He could tell, even without trying, that this was not a normal quirk problem. He watched the way the stranger stood, the way he reacted to noise, the way his body tensed when people got too close. This wasn't a villain posing for cameras. This was someone cornered. Aizawa spoke quietly to Endeavor. "We don't know what he is. Don't push." Endeavor's flames snapped higher in irritation. "If we don't push, we don't learn." Aizawa didn't argue. He just said, "If you push, and he breaks, we lose a city." That landed. Endeavor's flames lowered a fraction. Not because he agreed, because he understood the math. Nezu's voice came through the comms. "Proceed with containment protocol. Distance first, communication second. Force only as a last option." The stranger didn't understand their words, but he understood their shapes. Barriers, people moving back, weapons held ready. His chest rose and fell faster. A memory flashed through his mind. A voice, old and hard, commanding. A sharp pain at his neck. A collar. His hands shook. He squeezed them into fists until they stopped. And then, without warning, he moved. Not toward the heroes. Away. He jumped. It wasn't a normal jump. It was an instant blur. The ground cracked where his feet left it. He rose straight up, clearing rooftops like they were low fences. Hawks shot upward after him, fast. Endeavor followed in a burst of fire. The stranger landed on a wide rooftop and looked out at the city like it was a maze. He turned his head, listening. Searching. For what? Hawks didn't know. Hawks hovered at a safe distance. He kept his voice light. "Okay, you like high places. That's fair. Can we talk up here?" The stranger stared at him. Then he looked down. At the people far below. His shoulders lowered a little, like being away from the crowd helped him breathe. Endeavor landed hard and stepped forward. "You don't get to run, not after what you did to my city." The stranger's eyes hardened. Hawks wanted to snap at Endeavor, but he didn't. He stayed focused. Aizawa's voice crackled in Hawks' ear. "Keep him calm." Hawks took a risk. He held up his hands, palms out, showing he had no weapon. "We're not trying to trap you, but we can't leave you out here. Too many people. Too many noises." The stranger looked at Hawks' empty hands. Then he looked at Endeavor's flames. A small growl vibrated in his chest. Endeavor didn't back off. That was not who Endeavor was. Hawks' feathers floated forward and formed a soft ring in the air, not touching the stranger, just marking space, a boundary without bars. "Hey," Hawks said, "just breathe." For a moment, the stranger actually did. The green light around him faded, and below them, the system moved fast. A controlled location was chosen. Not a prison, not a public street. A training ground with strong barriers and wide empty space. UA. Because if the world had to learn what this man could do, it should happen where heroes trained to protect people. Izuku Midoriya watched from behind a reinforced window as the stranger entered the UA training area. His heart was beating too fast. Not because he wanted to fight, because he wanted to understand. The stranger walked between support columns and barrier emitters like he was walking into a trap. His eyes kept moving, counting exits, measuring distance, looking for hidden threats. Midoriya knew that look. He had seen it in scared kids, in abused animals, in people who expected pain every time someone smiled. All Might stood beside him, shoulders heavy, face serious. Not the bright smile. The real man. "All Might," Midoriya whispered. "He saved the bus." All Might nodded. "I saw. He didn't attack first." "I saw that too." Midoriya swallowed. He had so many questions that they piled up inside him until they hurt. No quirk identification. No hero license. No known costume. No support gear. And yet, that strength, that speed, that power burst that shook the street. He wrote notes in his head like he always did, but this time, his notes felt small. The stranger looked toward the window. For a second, his gaze met Midoriya's. Midoriya froze. The stranger's eyes were not cruel. They were tired. Then the stranger looked away. Aizawa entered the control room and spoke to Nezu through a screen. We need a baseline. We need to know if he can be reasoned with. Nezu's calm voice answered, polite as always. Agreed. And we need contingency plans that do not rely on punching harder. Midoriya almost laughed from stress, but the sound wouldn't come out. Endeavor stood on the field side of a barrier, arms crossed, heat rising off him. He looked at the stranger like he was staring at a fire that could burn down everything he cared about. Hawk stayed closer than anyone else, not close enough to be grabbed, close enough to be heard. Hawks tried again. Can you speak? Any language? Anything? The stranger's lips moved. A word came out, rough, like it hadn't been used in a while. Broly. Hawks blinked. That's your name? Broly didn't answer the question. He repeated it softer, like he was reminding himself he was still a person. Broly. Midoriya felt his breath catch. So he does have a name. He's not a thing. All Might's voice was gentle. Midoriya. Remember it. Names matter. Midoriya nodded fast. Nezu's team ran scans. Their screens filled with data, then error messages, then more errors. Heat readings spiked and dropped. Energy signatures didn't match any quirk profile. Muscle density readings made no sense. A technician whispered, "This is like a reactor, but it's alive." Aizawa stared at the numbers and felt cold creep up his spine. He had fought powerful villains. He had taught kids with dangerous quirks. He had faced Nomu and survived. This was different. This was not a dangerous quirk. This was an entirely different kind of power. And it was wearing a human face. Aizawa stepped closer to the barrier and spoke in a flat tone. Broly. Do you know where you are? Broly's brows pulled together. He looked around. At the walls, at the sky, at the controlled space. He did not know. He spoke another word, low and sharp. No. His voice sounded like stone rubbing against stone. Hawks nodded, as if that was progress. Okay. That's okay. We're going to help you. Endeavor made a sound of disapproval. Help him? We don't even know what he is. All Might stepped forward and placed a hand on Endeavor's shoulder. Endeavor stiffened, but didn't shrug it off. All Might's voice held that old symbol weight. We do know something. He chose to save people first. Endeavor's jaw tightened, and then he shook my city with a breath. All Might didn't deny it. Yes, which means we must be smart, and kind, and ready. Nezu's voice came over the speaker. I am requesting cooperation from the Hero Public Safety Commission. A pause. Then a new voice, smooth and firm. This is not a request, Principal Nezu. This is a situation. The public is already frightened. Nezu's smile did not reach his eyes. The public will be more frightened if we treat him like an animal. The commission voice cooled. Or they will be dead if we don't secure him. Midoriya listened and felt his stomach twist. He could already hear the arguments that would follow. Control, rights, safety, fear. And in the middle of it was Broly, standing alone on a training field, watching humans build rules around him like walls. Broly's mind flickered again with memories. A man's harsh command. A collar tightening. Pain that taught obedience. He didn't understand this world's words, but he understood the feeling of being claimed. His hands shook again. He pulled a long breath in through his nose, then out. Slow. He was trying. Midoriya saw it and felt something hot behind his eyes. He didn't know why a warrior like this was trying so hard not to break things, but he knew it mattered. Nezu ended the call and spoke to the room. We will proceed with minimal stress tests. No provocation. No shouting. No crowding. Endeavor scoffed. We can't treat him like glass. Aizawa answered without looking at Endeavor. We should treat this city like glass. That shut the room up. Midoriya watched Broly lower himself into a seated position on the grass, like he was copying what he had seen people do. He looked awkward doing it. Too big, too tense. Then, quietly, he leaned forward and touched the ground with his fingertips. Not to attack, to feel it, to remind himself where he was. And somewhere far away, in a hidden room full of screens and tubes, an old man with a calm voice listened to the reports and smiled. All for One did not need to see Broly to feel the change. A new piece has fallen onto the board, he said softly. Garaki giggled beside him, and it doesn't follow the rules. All the better, All for One replied. Rules are for people who fear losing. The first real test happened the next day. Not because the heroes were impatient, because the world was. News helicopters circled outside UA's airspace. Cameras zoomed in on the high walls. Social media was filled with blurry clips of a green flash and a man standing in a crater. Parents called schools. Businesses closed early. People argued in restaurants and on trains. UA could not hide a storm inside its walls forever. So they set a controlled session in Training Ground Beta. Wide space, reinforced structures, emergency evacuation routes. And still, every pro-hero present knew a hard truth. If Broly decided to leave, they could not stop him with force. They could only try to make leaving unnecessary. Aizawa stood on the field, scarf loose, eyes tired. Midoriya was not supposed to be there, not this close. But All Might had argued for it, quietly. He connects with people, All Might had said. He sees the person first. We need that. Nezu allowed it with strict conditions. Distance, Aizawa nearby, and Midoriya must follow orders. Midoriya nodded so hard his neck hurt. Broly stood across from them, bare hands at his sides. His gaze moved between faces like he was measuring threats. Hawks approached first, talking as he walked. Okay, simple rules. We're going to see what you can do. Just small things. You stop when we say stop. Broly's eyes narrowed at the word stop. It sounded too close to obey. Aizawa noticed and stepped in. His voice stayed flat. It's not a command. It's a safety signal. For everyone. Broly looked at Aizawa for a long moment. Aizawa did not blink. Finally, Broly gave a small nod. Midoriya's chest loosened a little. Hawks pointed at a reinforced concrete block the size of a small car. Can you lift that? Broly walked to it and put one hand under the edge. He lifted it like it was a backpack. He held it up without shaking. The heroes watching stiffened anyway, because the block was designed to challenge strong quirks. And Broly did it, with no effort. Hawks forced a smile. Cool. Put it down gently. Broly set it down as if he was placing a sleeping child. Midoriya thought, he's careful. That's important. Next, they tested speed. A drone shot across the field. Broly's eyes tracked it. He moved, and the world seemed to jump. He was suddenly beside it. He reached up, caught it, and held it still in his palm. The drone's propellers spun uselessly against his fingers. Hawks swallowed. Endeavor's flames rose in spite of him. Midoriya felt his brain trying to do math and failing. Broly handed the drone back, like he didn't understand why anyone cared. Then came the hardest part. Energy. Nezu's team had built a safe target wall made of layered materials and shock absorbers. The wall was meant to take massive hits. It had sensors in it. It was as ready as humans could make it. Hawks kept his voice calm. Broly, can you make the green light again? Just a little. Toward the wall. Broly's face tightened. He remembered the pulse in the city, the fear, the glass breaking, the scream. He did not want to do that again. Midoriya took one step forward, then stopped. He kept his distance, like he promised. But he made sure Broly could see his face. "It's okay," Midoriya said, voice quiet. "Just a little. And we're all ready. No one is going to get hurt." Broly stared at him. Midoriya's hands shook, but he didn't hide them. He was scared, but he was still there. Broly's breathing grew heavier. A faint green aura appeared, licking around his shoulders and arms. The grass beneath his feet flattened as if pressed by invisible weight. The air warmed. Sensors screamed warnings on a screen in the control room. A technician whispered, "That's already above." Nezu cut him off. "Quiet. Let it record." Broly raised one hand. A small sphere of green light formed above his palm. Small for him. It was still bright enough to hurt to look at. Hawks' feathers tensed, ready to become shields. Aizawa's eyes narrowed, useless against raw strength, but his body stayed in place anyway. He would not run first. Endeavor's flames surged, not as an attack, but as instinct, like a guard dog raising its hackles. Midoriya's heart hammered. Broly aimed at the wall. He hesitated. Midoriya could see the fight inside him, not a fight with heroes, a fight with himself. Then Broly released the blast. It crossed the field in a clean line and struck the wall. For half a second, it looked like nothing happened. Then the wall exploded outward. Not into dust, into chunks. The shock absorber screamed. The ground cracked in a straight line. A shockwave rolled past the heroes and rattled their teeth. The blast did not stop at the wall. It continued through the barrier layer behind it, then into the reinforced hill that had been built as the final safety stop. The hill's surface glowed red. Steam burst out. Rock fractured like it was thin ice. Broly's eyes widened in alarm. He hadn't meant that. He hadn't meant any of that. His aura spiked higher, reacting to his own fear. Hawk shouted, "Stop! Broly, stop!" The word hit wrong. Broly's pupils tightened, his body stiffened. Aizawa stepped forward fast. "Broly, breathe, look at me." Broly's chest heaved. Green light crackled around him. Midoriya knew this moment. He knew that if Broly tipped, they could not pull him back with force. So Midoriya did the only thing he had. He spoke like Broly was a person who was scared. Not a bomb. "It's okay," Midoriya said, louder now, but not sharp. "You did what we asked. You stopped before it got worse. You're here. You're safe." Broly's eyes snapped to him. Midoriya held his gaze and didn't look away. The green light trembled. Then, slowly, it faded. Broly lowered his hand. He stared at the destroyed wall like it was proof of a curse he carried. Hawks let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Endeavor said nothing, but his face was tight. Not just with anger, with a hard, unwanted respect. Nezu's voice came through the speaker, calm as ever. "Thank you for cooperating, Broly." Broly didn't respond. He turned away from all of them and walked to the far edge of the field, where the grass met the fence. He sat down with his back to the world. His shoulders trembled once, like he was trying not to shake. Midoriya stared at him and felt a heavy truth settle in his chest. Broly wasn't dangerous because he wanted to hurt people. Broly was dangerous because he didn't know how to live with what he was. And out in the world beyond UA's walls, people were already choosing what they believed. Some believed he was a monster. Some believed he was a weapon. And in the shadows, villains were already planning how to turn belief into a trap. The first major threat did not arrive with a roar. It arrived like paperwork. A message came down from the Hero Public Safety Commission. Formal words. Formal stamps. A list of demands dressed up as recommendations. Transfer the subject to a government facility. Authorize medical sampling. Limit contact with students. Prepare deployment options. Nezu read it with a small smile that meant he was annoyed. Aizawa read it and felt his patience drain. All Might read it and looked tired, in a way that had nothing to do with injuries. Midoriya didn't see the message. He saw the tension it created. Because the moment the world learned there was a power it could not measure, it did what humans always did. It tried to own it. Nezu called a meeting. Endeavor argued for stronger restrictions. If he loses control, UA becomes a crater. All Might argued for trust with boundaries. If we treat him like a prisoner, he will become one. Aizawa argued for realism. We don't have a way to stop him. We only have a way to guide him. Hawks argued for information. Somebody out there is going to poke this bear. I want to know who first. While they argued, Broly sat alone in a quiet room built for containment, not comfort. A tray of food sat untouched beside him, not because he wasn't hungry, because he didn't trust gifts. He stared at his own hands. He flexed his fingers slowly. He remembered a planet with open skies and hard ground. He remembered running until his lungs burned. He remembered fighting until his arms shook. He remembered a voice telling him what to do. He did not want that voice again. A soft knock came at the door. Broly's body tensed. The door opened slowly. Midoriya stepped in, holding something flat in his hands. It was not food. It was a clipboard. Midoriya looked embarrassed. They told me to bring you this." Broly stared at the clipboard like it might bite him. Midoriya tried to smile. It's a damage form. It's silly. But people here do this for everything." Broly didn't understand the words, but he understood Midoriya's tone. Not fear. Not control. Just awkward honesty. Broly reached out and took the clipboard carefully, like it was fragile. He turned it over once, confused. Midoriya pointed at the bottom line. "They want a signature." Broly looked at the pen, then at Midoriya. Midoriya shrugged, small and helpless. "I know. It's weird." For the first time since arriving, Broly made a sound that wasn't a growl. A short, rough breath through his nose. Not laughter, but close. He pressed the pen down and dragged it across the paper in a messy line. It wasn't a signature. It was proof he was trying. Midoriya's shoulders relaxed. "Thank you." Broly handed the clipboard back, then looked away fast like he regretted showing anything at all. Midoriya didn't push. He just said, "If you want, I can come back tomorrow. We can train. Slow. Safe." Broly didn't answer, but he didn't tell him to leave either. Midoriya took that as a yes. And that night, far from UA, Hawks found the first sign that someone else had also taken interest. A small camera drone was found melted on the edge of the airspace. Not UA tech. Not media tech. Something quieter. Something that had tried to watch without being seen. Hawks stared at the remains in his palm and felt a cold chill. "Yeah," he muttered. "They're coming." They came 2 days later. Not with an army. With a plan. The transfer was scheduled at dawn, not because Nezu agreed with the commission, because Nezu had negotiated a joint evaluation off-campus in a remote training route where civilians would be minimal. Nezu had put conditions on it. More heroes. More barriers. More control. The commission agreed. Hawks didn't like how quickly they agreed. Aizawa didn't like it either. And Broly, standing inside a reinforced transport unit, didn't like it at all. The unit was large, designed to hold dangerous villains. It had wide doors and open vents, so it didn't feel like a box, but it was still a box. Broly's breathing was steady at first. Then the doors sealed. Metal clicked. Locks engaged. Broly's eyes narrowed. A memory struck. Metal. Locks. Pain. He stood up slowly. Aizawa walked beside the unit on the outside, eyes on Broly through the reinforced glass. He spoke through a comm speaker. "Broly, this is a move, not a cage. We will open it if you signal distress." Broly didn't understand every word, but he understood the calm. He sat back down. The convoy began to roll. 3 hero cars in front, 3 behind, Hawks above, circling like a watchful bird. Endeavor on the ground, flames low, ready to move fast. A rescue team on standby. They had done everything right. That was why it was so dangerous. Because villains loved it when heroes believed they were ready. The first strike was small. A tire spike strip erupted from the road and shredded the lead vehicle's tires. The car swerved, controlled by a hero driver, and skidded into a barrier line. Hawks's feathers shot down and stabilized it. Endeavor moved forward, heat flaring. Contact! Smoke grenades rolled across the road, thick and black. Not normal smoke. This one messed with sensors. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Visual only. Stay tight. From the smoke, fast shapes lunged. Not villains in masks. Nomu. Not the biggest kind. Not the strongest kind. But built for one job. Hold. Delay. Create confusion. One Nomu slammed into the side of Broly's transport unit and grabbed the frame like it wanted to tip it over. The metal groaned. Broly's head snapped up. He saw a monster. He saw a cage. He saw force. His aura flickered. Outside, Aizawa caught the change instantly. No, keep him calm, keep him calm. Midoriya was in a nearby vehicle, watching through a window, stomach twisting. He saw Endeavor launch forward and punch a Nomu hard enough to blow it back through smoke. He saw Hawks's feathers slice and pin and guide. Clean. Efficient. He saw Todoroki throw up a wall of ice to block the road and protect the transport. They were doing well. But then a sound hit the air. A sharp electronic chirp, high and cruel. It came from the transport unit. Broly flinched like he had been stabbed. A small device had latched onto the unit's underside. It wasn't exploding. It was making noise. A trigger. Broly's hands clenched. His breathing broke. Green light crawled over his arms. Midoriya's mouth went dry. No! Aizawa sprinted closer to the glass. Broly, look at me! Broly's eyes were wide now, not with anger. With panic. The Nomu outside banged the unit again. The chirp rose higher. Broly's aura surged. The transport unit shook. Metal began to bend from the inside, not because Broly wanted out, but because his power was leaking through him like steam through cracks. Endeavor saw it and swore. Hawks, find the source! Hawks's feathers shot under the convoy like hands. One feather found the device, touched it, and burned from the heat building under the unit. Hawks hissed through his teeth. It's stuck! It's designed to survive heat. Then rip it off, Endeavor barked. Hawks tried. The feather snapped. The chirp continued. Midoriya's door was already open before he knew he moved. He ran toward the transport, ignoring shouted orders behind him. Aizawa saw him and didn't stop him. Not because it was safe, because it might be necessary. Midoriya reached the glass and looked inside. Broly's shoulders were trembling. His jaw was clenched so hard it looked like it hurt. Midoriya put his palm against the glass. Broly! It's me! Broly's head snapped toward him. Midoriya forced his voice to stay steady, even as the air shook around him. You're not trapped. You're not alone. We're right here. Broly's aura spiked again. The glass creaked. Aizawa felt fear hit him like ice. If the unit failed, Broly's panic could become a blast wave that would wipe out everyone nearby. Aizawa made a choice fast. He grabbed the transport's manual override and yanked it. The locks popped. The doors cracked open. Aizawa shouted, "Open it, now!" Endeavor's eyes widened. Are you insane? Aizawa didn't look at him. Do you want him to break it? The doors opened wider. Air rushed in. Broly froze. For a second, the world was silent except for the chirp and the distant fighting. Broly stared at the open doors. Then he looked at Midoriya. Midoriya stepped back, giving space. He pointed away from the convoy, toward open ground past Todoroki's ice wall. Out there, away from people. We'll go with you. Broly's breathing slowed by a fraction. He stood up and stepped out. The moment his feet hit the road, The ground cracked under the pressure of his presence. Nomu lunged again. Broly turned his head. His eyes hardened. Not because he wanted violence, because his body only knew one answer when danger came close. He moved. A single step put him in front of the Nomu. He grabbed it by the face and slammed it into the road. The impact made a crater. The Nomu twitched and tried to rise. Broly lifted it and threw it. Not at a hero. Not at a car. He threw it into the empty field beyond the ice wall. The Nomu hit and rolled, breaking the ground like a plow. Endeavor stared, shocked in spite of himself. That throw alone was beyond what most heroes could do with full effort. Hawks' feathers guided the remaining Nomu away from the convoy, keeping them from touching Broly again. But the chirp was still sounding. Broly's aura rose again, responding to the noise like it was a whip. Midoriya saw Broly's hands tremble. He didn't think. He acted. He sprinted under the transport unit, ignoring the heat, and saw the device, a small black puck fused to metal. His fingers touched it, and pain shot through him. It was hot enough to burn. He hissed, but kept hold. He used one for all, just enough to grip hard, and he ripped it off. The device came free with a tearing squeal. Midoriya threw it as far as he could. It hit the ground and shattered. The chirp died. Broly's aura flickered like a light losing power. He stood still, chest heaving, eyes wide, as if he couldn't believe the sound was gone. Then the villains revealed the real point. A figure stepped from the smoke at a distance, voice amplified through a cheap speaker. Not close enough to be caught, close enough to be heard. "Look at him," the voice said, mocking. "They're already trying to leash you." Broly's head turned toward the sound. Doria's stomach dropped. This wasn't random. This was planned to hurt, not just attack. The voice continued. "You don't belong here. They fear you. They will cage you. We won't." Endeavor shouted back, "Show yourself!" The voice laughed and faded as the smoke thickened again. "Enjoy your hero society." And then the Nomu retreated, not because they were beaten, but because their job was done. They had tested the response. They had created footage. They had shown the world a glimpse of Broly's panic. They had stolen something, too. Hawks' eyes narrowed as he watched a small drone zip through the smoke and vanish with a flashing red light. "They got data," he muttered. Nezu's voice came through the comm, sharp now. "Confirm. Our sensor logs are being copied." Aizawa's fists clenched. "So it was a theft." Endeavor's flames roared. "Cowards!" Broly stood in the center of it all, not understanding the words, but understanding the feeling. People shouting, systems moving, plans inside plans, and someone out there trying to claim him with sweet lies. Midoriya stepped closer, careful. "Broly, you did good. You didn't hit anyone. You moved the fight away." Broly's eyes flicked to the convoy, to the broken road, to the heroes, to the smoke. Then he looked down at his hands again. He didn't look proud. He looked scared of what those hands could do. Aizawa watched him and made a quiet promise to himself. "We can't win this by force. We can only win it by keeping him from becoming what they want." Far away, in the dark, All for One listened to the report and smiled wider. "Excellent," he said softly. "Now the public is afraid, and he is unsure." Garaki giggled. What a lovely foundation for control. All for One's voice stayed calm. "Soon he will need a choice, and we will be there to offer it." Back on the road, the smoke began to clear. Cameras would arrive soon. Questions would flood in soon. And the heroes, standing around a man who could break cities by accident, had to decide what story the world would hear first. Monster, weapon, or person. UA went quiet after the ambush, but the outside world got louder. The first clips hit the internet before the sun fully rose. Shaky phone footage, smoke, Heroes shouting. A huge man stepping out of a transport unit like he had been born inside a storm. A flash of green light that made the camera shake. By noon, people were already arguing like they had known the truth all along. In a small apartment, a mother turned the volume down so her child wouldn't hear the words monster and weapon repeated again and again. In a crowded train, two office workers stared at their screens, then at each other, as if one of them might have answers. On morning talk shows, hosts smiled too wide while experts spoke too fast. UA staff watched it all in a room with the curtains drawn. Midoriya sat with his hands on his knees. He tried to keep still, but his leg kept bouncing. Every time the news replayed the moment Broly's aura flared, Midoriya's chest tightened. The clips never showed the part he cared about most. They never showed Broly stopping before things got worse. They never showed Broly looking scared of himself. They just showed power. Aizawa stood behind the students' seating row, arms crossed, eyes half-lidded. He looked tired, but his attention was sharp. He was watching the room, not the screen. He was watching how fear moved from person to person, like a cold draft. All Might sat closer than usual to Midoriya. His posture was calm, but his jaw was tight. He had been the symbol of peace long enough to recognize the pattern. When people were afraid, they looked for simple stories. Endeavor didn't come to the student area. He met with Nezu and the commission in a secure conference room. Hawks moved between rooms like a messenger who never fully relaxed. Nezu's screen lit up with the commission representative's face. The representative looked composed, but there was impatience under it. "Public confidence is falling," she said. "The clip of the subject exiting containment will be seen as a failure." Nezu's small smile stayed polite. "It will also be seen as a human being, refusing a cage." "That is not the message we want," she replied. "We want the message that we can control threats." Aizawa, seated off to the side, let out a short breath through his nose. "You can't control this with slogans." The representative's eyes narrowed. "And you can't handle this with feelings." Nezu's tail flicked once. "Feelings are not the issue. Behavior is, and behavior improves under trust." Endeavor leaned forward, heat rising off him even when he wasn't burning. "Trust doesn't stop collateral damage. It reduces it," All Might said, voice low but firm. He wasn't smiling. He was being a leader. The representative ignored him. "New directive. The subject will be transferred to a government facility within 72 hours. No student access. Medical sampling will begin immediately." Nezu's smile thinned. "You are assuming he will agree." "We are not asking him," she said. The room went very still. Endeavor's flames flickered higher, more anger than heat. Aizawa's eyes hardened. All Might's voice stayed steady. "If you try to force him, you will create the disaster you claim to prevent." The representative's expression didn't change. "That is why we have contingencies." Nezu leaned back in his chair. "Contingencies are plans for failure. I prefer plans for success." The call ended with no agreement, just deadlines. When the screen went dark, no one spoke for a moment. Aizawa broke the silence first. "They're going to push him until he snaps." Endeavor's fists clenched. "Then we keep him from snapping." All Might shook his head slightly. "Not just from snapping, from being treated like a tool." Nezu's eyes narrowed in thought. "And we find out who staged the ambush, because this was not only an attack, it was a test." Hawks, who had been leaning against the wall, straightened. "Yeah, and whoever did it wanted two things, fear and data." Aizawa looked at him. "Do you have anything?" Hawks pulled a small sealed bag from his jacket. Inside were melted bits of metal and plastic. "The drone we found near UA's airspace. It wasn't media. It wasn't ours. The parts are weird. The signal hopping is not normal." Nezu's gaze sharpened. "Not normal how?" Hawks's smile didn't reach his eyes. Like someone didn't build it using our usual standards. Endeavor's voice was rough. "Say it." Hawks hesitated, then said it anyway. "It might not be from here." All Might's eyes widened a fraction. Aizawa stared at the bag as if it might move. Nezu didn't look surprised. He looked satisfied, like a puzzle piece had clicked into place. "That fits the scan errors. And the energy readings." Endeavor scoffed, but the sound had no confidence in it. An alien. All Might's gaze dropped, thoughtful. Then he really is alone. Broly sat in a quiet room that wasn't a cell, but wasn't comfort either. The walls were strong. The corners were rounded. The air smelled like clean metal. A single chair sat in the middle. Broly didn't use it. He sat on the floor with his back against the wall, knees drawn up, arms resting on them. He was still in the way that people got still when they were trying to disappear. Outside the room, two heroes stood guard at a distance. They didn't talk to him. They didn't stare. That was the rule Nezu gave them. No crowding. No noise. No pushing. Still, Broly felt watched. He felt measured. He had felt it his whole life. A tray of food waited near the door. Broly's eyes flicked to it once, then away. Hunger was not his biggest enemy. Trust was... He stared at his hands again. He opened and closed his fingers slowly. The movement was careful, like he was afraid his own strength might break the air. Images came in short flashes. A harsh voice, a command. Pain. A collar. He didn't remember the words, but his body remembered the meaning. Obey or suffer. His jaw clenched. A soft knock came at the door. Broly's shoulders tightened. The door opened slowly. Not fast. Not aggressive. Shoto Todoroki stepped inside. He didn't bring a team. He didn't bring restraints. He didn't even bring the usual hero confidence. He brought a small bottle of water and set it down near the tray. Then he backed up and sat down on the floor, leaving space between them like it was a line of respect. Broly watched him closely. Todoroki kept his hands visible. "I'm not here to test you," he said. "I'm not here to trap you." Broly didn't answer. Todoroki nodded as if that was fine. People are scared. They talk a lot when they're scared. They say things that make problems bigger. Broly's eyes narrowed slightly. He understood tone more than words. Todoroki looked down at his own hands for a moment. "When I was younger, people looked at me and decided what I was going to be." Broly's gaze sharpened. Todoroki's voice stayed simple. "They didn't ask me. They didn't care what I wanted. They just wanted my power." Broly's fingers curled. Todoroki met his eyes. "I don't know what happened to you, but I can tell you this. If you let them decide what you are, you will hate them. And you will hate yourself." Broly's breathing changed. Deeper. Todoroki continued, "But if you decide for yourself, even if you're scared, then you have a chance." Broly stared at him for a long time. Then, rough and low, he spoke. "Stop." The word came out like a warning. Todoroki didn't flinch. He nodded once. "Okay." He stood up slowly and moved toward the door. Before he left, Todoroki added one more sentence, plain and honest. "If you want to train without hurting anyone, there are places we can take you. Quiet places." Broly's gaze dropped to the floor. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. Todoroki left. Broly stared at the water bottle. After a long moment, he reached out and picked it up. He didn't drink right away. He just held it, like he was testing whether a gift could exist without a hidden hook. Hawks walked across UA grounds like he belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. He was good at that. He smiled at staff. He nodded at students. He made jokes that were light enough to be ignored. But his eyes never stopped working. He had 3 goals. Find out who made the drone. Find out who triggered the convoy. And find out what the villains wanted to do with Broly's name. He met Nezu in a small lab space filled with screens and sensor logs. A tech team worked quietly. They looked like they wanted to run, but they didn't. That was the kind of bravery heroes rarely talked about. Hawks dropped into a chair like he was relaxed. Any luck? A technician shook her head. The drone's materials don't match any licensed support company we know. The signal encryption is strange. Nezu stood with his paws clasped behind his back. Strange in what way? The technician hesitated, then said, It's like it's built to communicate with something that isn't part of our network. Hawks tilted his head. So, not just villain tech. Different system. Nezu's eyes narrowed. Yes. Hawks leaned back. Okay, that's one problem. Now the bigger one. The ambush wasn't meant to kill him. It was meant to make him look unstable. Nezu's mouth curved slightly, and to show the public that even UA cannot contain him. Hawk's voice went quieter, which means someone wants the public to demand control. Nezu nodded. Or removal. Hawks's feathers twitched, a sign he didn't like what he was thinking. So, what do we do when the commission shows up with a shiny new cage? Nezu's gaze didn't shift. We delay, we negotiate, and we gather proof that a forced transfer will increase risk. Hawks snorted softly. Proof doesn't always beat fear. Nezu's smile returned, small and sharp. Then we also gather something else. Hawks raised an eyebrow, which is? Nezu tapped a screen showing the convoy route. We gather the identity of the schemer who is shaping fear. Hawks's smile finally showed a hint of real teeth. Now that I can do. In a hidden place, far from UA, a man sat like a king without a throne. All for One listened to recordings without needing to see them. He heard Endeavor's voice. He heard Aizawa's commands. He heard Hawks's calm tone. And he heard Broly's breathing. That was the most important part. Because breathing showed control, and a break in breathing showed panic. Garaki stood beside him with a tablet full of numbers and a delighted expression. The energy output is absurd. It does not fit the quirk factor model. All for One's voice was smooth, meaning we cannot steal it. Garaki's smile twisted. Not directly, but we can learn it. We can build around it. All for One's unseen gaze shifted. The question is not how to take his power. The question is how to aim it. Garaki tapped the screen. We already have a path. We can craft a body that survives contact long enough to force escalation. All for One chuckled softly. A shield. Garaki's eyes gleamed. A mirror. All for One leaned forward slightly. And what of his mind? The mind is more valuable than raw force. Garaki's giggle returned. We will help him feel understood. All for One's voice became almost gentle. Yes, we will offer him a simple choice. Garaki tilted his head. Hero society cages you, or we set you free. All for One smiled. Exactly. He paused, then added, but freedom must come with a leash he doesn't see. Garaki nodded. Then we should trigger another public incident. Something bigger. Something that makes the heroes look helpless. All for One's tone stayed calm. Not yet. Let fear simmer. Let the commission push first. Let the heroes argue. He tapped the armrest once. Then we strike where their kindness becomes weakness. The next meeting at UA didn't feel like a meeting. It felt like a storm warning. Nezu gathered key staff and a few trusted heroes. Aizawa, All Might, Hawks, Endeavor, Recovery Girl, a handful of support technicians. Midoriya wasn't invited, but he stood outside the door anyway, listening just enough to know it was bad. Inside, Nezu spoke first. We have 72 hours before the commission arrives with transfer authority. Endeavor's voice was sharp. We deny them. And what happens, Hawks asked, when they call it obstruction and send a larger team? Aizawa's gaze was flat. Then Broly sees a larger team coming to take him. All Might exhaled slowly, and he runs. Or he fights. Nezu nodded. Yes, That is why we must prepare a different path. Endeavor's flames flickered. What path? We can't hide him. Nezu's smile returned. We don't hide him. We stabilize him. Aizawa frowned. Meaning? Nezu looked at Hawks. We gather evidence that he is not acting with malice, that he responds to calm. That forced containment increases risk. Hawks nodded. I can sell that if I have footage and statements. Endeavor scoffed. Selling isn't safety. Nezu's eyes narrowed. Safety is also psychology. And so far, the only real control we've seen is self-control. All Might's gaze softened. Then we help him build it. Aizawa's voice was quiet. He needs space. Nezu's tail flicked. Exactly. Hawks leaned forward. So what are you thinking? Remote training? Mountains? No cameras? Nezu nodded. A controlled field trip. Only select heroes. Only rescue-ready routes. We frame it as risk reduction. Endeavor looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He knew the math too. Aizawa added, and we watch for villain movement. Hawks's grin returned, thin and bright. Already watching. Nezu's smile became sharper. Good, because this next stage will invite them. All Might's eyes narrowed. Invite them? Nezu's voice stayed polite. If they are building plans around Broly, they will not wait forever. We will choose the place and time where their interference is least likely to kill civilians. Endeavor's flames flared, so we set a trap. Nezu corrected gently. We set a safer stage. Outside the door, Midoriya swallowed hard, because he knew what this meant. They weren't planning a fight to win. They were planning a fight to survive. That evening, Midoriya visited Broly again. The room was quieter than before. Broly sat near the wall, but he had moved the chair closer to himself, like he was learning how humans arranged space. The tray of food was still mostly untouched, but the water bottle was half empty. That felt like a victory. Midoriya stepped in slowly. He didn't carry a clipboard this time. He carried nothing. Broly watched him enter. Midoriya sat down on the floor at the same distance Todoroki had used. Not too close. Close enough to be heard. He spoke softly. There's a lot of people talking about you. Broly's eyes narrowed. Midoriya chose simpler words. They're scared. Broly's jaw tightened. He looked away. Midoriya took a breath. I'm scared too. Broly turned back, surprised. Midoriya's voice shook a little, but he kept going. Not of you as a person. I'm scared of what happens when people decide you're not a person. Broly stared at him. Still. Midoriya nodded toward the door. They want to move you to a place that isn't here. Broly's body stiffened. His hands curled. Midoriya lifted both palms slightly. Not today. Not right now. But soon. And we're trying to stop it. Broly's breathing got heavier. Midoriya spoke faster, trying to catch the moment before it slipped. We think, if you can train somewhere quiet, if you can show control, it'll be harder for them to force you. Broly's eyes narrowed. The word force mattered. Midoriya nodded. Quiet place. No crowd, no shouting. Just space. Broly looked down at his hands again. Then he spoke. Low. Train. Midoriya's chest loosened. Yes. Broly's voice roughened. No cage. Midoriya answered immediately. No cage. Broly's gaze held his for a long moment. Then Broly gave a single, small nod. It wasn't trust, but it was permission. Midoriya stood up slowly. We'll go soon. I'll be there. Broly didn't answer, but his shoulders lowered by a fraction after Midoriya left. And in the hallway, a staff member rushed past with a stack of papers and muttered, I'm going to need 3 new damage reports for the training wall alone. Midoriya almost laughed, and then almost cried, because it was so normal and so ridiculous next to everything else. The quiet training trip started before dawn. Not because they wanted secrecy for drama, because they wanted fewer eyes. A small team moved with Broly. Aizawa, Hawks, Endeavor, Todoroki, Midoriya, under strict supervision. A rescue crew with support gear, a portable barrier unit that could make a wide safe zone if needed. Nezu stayed at UA, coordinating from a distance, ready to shut it down if anything looked wrong. They chose a remote mountain region with open fields and rocky slopes, far from towns, far from busy roads. The air was cold and clean. Broly stepped out of the transport unit and inhaled like a drowning man finding air. He looked up at the sky and held the gaze there longer than necessary. Midoriya noticed. He didn't comment. He just let it be. Aizawa kept his voice flat. This is the plan. You train. We watch. We keep distance. If you feel loss of control, you signal. Broly looked at him. Signal. Aizawa pointed to a simple cloth band on a pole. Pull it down. Broly stared at it as if he was memorizing it. Hawks hopped down from a boulder. And no loud surprises. No sudden hero yelling. We're doing the calm adult thing today. Endeavor grunted. Speak for yourself. Hawks smiled. You're trying. That's the scary part. For a brief moment, the tension eased. Broly walked into the open field and stood still. Then he began to move. Not like a show. Like training. He shifted his stance. He punched the air. He breathed in a pattern that seemed learned through pain. Slow. Deep. Controlled. His muscles tensed and released like he was teaching his body a lesson. Midoriya watched with wide eyes. He had expected violence. Instead, he saw discipline. Todoroki stood beside him, hands in his pockets, calm. He's not trying to become stronger, Todoroki said quietly. He's trying to become safer. Midoriya nodded. Yeah. Aizawa's gaze stayed fixed. He didn't relax. But he looked less ready to attack, and more ready to protect. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Broly's breathing stayed steady. His aura flickered once, then settled. Midoriya felt hope rise in his chest like a warm light. And then Hawks's wings twitched. He tilted his head like he heard a sound others couldn't. Aizawa noticed immediately. What? Hawks's voice went low. We're not alone. Endeavor's flames rose slightly. I smell it too. Midoriya's stomach dropped. From the far ridge, a small shape moved, then another. Not hikers. Not animals. Too fast. Too silent. Hawk's feathers spread out, forming a thin net around the team. Stay calm, he murmured. No sudden moves. Broly paused his training and turned his head. He sensed it too. His shoulders tightened. Aizawa stepped forward, voice flat but firm. Broly, stay. Breathe. Broly's jaw clenched. The shapes crested the ridge. Nomu, but not like the ones in the convoy. These were larger, denser. Their skin looked layered like armor. Their eyes were dull. Their mouths were too wide. And one of them had something stranger. Its chest glowed faintly, like a dark crystal under skin. It stared at Broly and made a sound that wasn't a roar. It sounded like a machine trying to speak. Hawks whispered, that one's new. Endeavor stepped forward. Protect the rescue team. Todoroki, ice wall, now. Todoroki raised one hand and slammed it down. A thick wall of ice surged up, blocking the path toward the vehicles and support crew. Midoriya moved with him, ready to help evacuate. Aizawa's scarf shifted as he prepared, but his eyes were still on Broly. Because Broly's aura had flickered again. The Nomu moved first. It charged Broly. Fast. Broly didn't wait for it to reach him. He stepped forward and met it head-on. His fist drove into its chest with a single heavy strike. The ground cracked under the impact. The Nomu didn't fly back. It slid only a few feet. Broly's eyes widened. That was new. The Nomu's chest glow brightened, and the air around Broly shivered, like something was pulling at his energy. Broly felt it. A tug. Not pain. A drain. His aura surged in response, instinctive like a cornered animal getting bigger to look dangerous. The Nomu's chest glow flared brighter. Hawks' eyes sharpened. It's absorbing. Or redirecting. Aizawa's voice was sharp. "Broly, don't blast!" Broly didn't understand the words, but he understood the urgency. He grabbed the Nomu by the shoulders and tried to throw it. The Nomu dug its feet in and held, muscle against muscle. Broly's expression changed. Not anger. Focus. He twisted, shifted his grip, and slammed the Nomu into the ground hard enough to crater the rock. The Nomu bounced, then rose again like pain was a suggestion. More Nomu poured down the ridge, heading for the support crew's position. Endeavor launched into them, flames exploding outward. He burned space between the monsters and the humans. He wasn't trying to kill them with fire alone. He was trying to control the battlefield. Hawks' feathers sliced and pinned, guiding a Nomu's arm away from a rescue worker, pulling another off balance, breaking lines of attack. Todoroki expanded the ice wall, then layered it with a burst of fire on the far side to create steam and slow the approach. Midoriya moved with the rescue team, shouting clear orders. "Back! Stay behind the wall! Follow the markers!" His mind split into pieces, each one tracking a different danger. But his eyes kept darting back to Broly, because Broly was still fighting the new Nomu. And he was learning in real time that something here could touch his power. The Nomu slammed a fist into Broly's side. The hit would have shattered a building if it landed on anyone else. Broly slid back a few steps, boots carving lines into rock. He didn't look hurt. He looked surprised. His aura surged again, thicker now, greener, climbing his shoulders like a living flame. The Nomu's chest glow pulsed, pulling harder. The air warped. Aizawa shouted again, "Broly! Keep it close! Don't let it pull you into a burst!" Broly's breathing broke. For a second, the old panic rose. He saw a trap. He saw control. He saw someone trying to take what was inside him. He opened his mouth, and a deep growl rolled out, shaking loose pebbles from the slope. Midoriya's heart lurched. He knew that sound. That was the door cracking open. Midoriya sprinted toward the fight before anyone could stop him. Aizawa saw him but didn't grab him. His eyes stayed on Broly. He trusted Midoriya's instincts more than he trusted the Commission's plans. Midoriya kept his distance, just like before, but he made sure Broly could see him. "Broly!" he shouted, voice loud enough to cut through the chaos, but not sharp. "Look! You're doing it! You're staying with it! You're not hurting anyone!" Broly's gaze snapped to him. For a second, Broly's body hesitated. Not because Midoriya was strong, because Midoriya was familiar. Because Midoriya's face didn't say weapon. It said person. The Nomu struck again, trying to force Broly into a burst. Broly reacted faster. He changed tactics. Instead of blasting, he locked his arms around the Nomu like a bear hug. He squeezed, controlling it. Then he lifted it straight up. The Nomu's chest glow pulsed wildly, trying to pull energy from Broly's aura. Broly forced his aura down. It wasn't gone. It was contained. His muscles bulged as he kept the power inside, like holding back a flood behind a dam. He jumped. Up. High. He carried the Nomu into the air, away from the ground, away from the support crew, away from everyone. Then he angled toward a rocky cliff face that led into empty valley space. He slammed the Nomu into the cliff. Rock exploded outward. The Nomu's chest glow flared, then cracked. A jagged line split through it, like glass breaking. The glow dimmed. The pull stopped. Broly didn't pause. He grabbed the Nomu's head and drove it into the rock again. Once. Twice. The third time, the Nomu went limp. Broly released it and let it drop into the empty valley, far from people. He hovered for a half second, then landed back on the field with a heavy thud. The ground cracked, but no shockwave hit the team. He controlled that too. Hawks stared at him, breathing hard. "Okay," Hawks muttered. "That was smart." Endeavor glanced back mid-fight. saw the broken crystal on the Nomu's chest, and realized what it meant. Someone had designed this. Someone had prepared for Broly. Todoroki shouted, "More incoming!" A fresh wave of Nomu rushed the ice wall, climbing, tearing, pushing like they didn't care about pain. Aizawa moved, scarf snapping out. He didn't erase Broly's strength, but he could still shut down quirk functions in the Nomu. He focused, blinking slow, controlling his own body like it was a weapon. Nomu stumbled as their enhancements flickered. Endeavor took advantage, blasting them back. Midoriya used one-for-all in short controlled bursts to move debris, rescue a fallen tech, and smash a Nomu's knee just enough to drop it without launching it into the support line. Then Broly moved again. He didn't charge into the crowd like a berserk force. He moved like a storm being aimed. He stepped between the Nomu and the rescue crew. He used his body as a wall. A Nomu swung at him. Broly caught the arm. The impact shook the ground. He twisted, snapped the arm like it was a branch, and tossed the creature sideways into empty rock. Another Nomu leapt for a rescue worker. Broly appeared in front of it and slapped it down into the ground so fast it looked like the creature had been deleted. But each hit made the air tremble. Each tremble was a reminder. If Broly lost control, the mountains would not hold him. And the villains knew it. Because then, the second part of the trap arrived. A voice echoed from a hidden speaker in the rocks, smooth, calm, too calm for a battlefield. "See," the voice said, "they brought you out here to test you." Broly froze for half a second. Midoriya's stomach sank. "No," the voice continued, "they put you in a box. They watched you like an animal. They only smile when you obey." Broly's hands clenched. Aizawa's eyes snapped toward the rocks, scanning for the source. "Hawks!" Hawks shot upward, feathers spreading, searching. Endeavor roared, "Coward!" The voice didn't react. It spoke like it was telling a bedtime story. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to be their tool." Broly's aura flickered, rising. Midoriya shouted, "Broly, don't listen!" Broly's breathing broke again. The words were not perfect in his mind, but the feeling behind them was familiar. Control. Obey. Cage. A memory struck. Pain at his neck. His aura surged. The rocks around him began to lift, pebbles floating like they were weightless. Aizawa stepped forward, voice sharp and direct. "Broly, look at me." Broly didn't. His eyes were fixed on the rocks, searching for the voice like a predator searching for a threat. The voice got softer. "Come with us. We won't cage you." Hawks found a small device wedged in a crack and flicked at a feather blade. It split in half, sparks flying. The voice cut out mid-sentence. Silence hit the battlefield like a slap. Broly stood shaking, aura crackling. Midoriya moved closer, still careful, hands open. "Broly," he said, voice low now. "You're here. You're doing good. You're saving people." Broly's eyes snapped to him again. Midoriya swallowed. "You're not anyone's tool." Broly's aura trembled. Then, slowly, like a muscle being unclenched, it lowered. The floating stones dropped to the ground with soft taps. The Nomu wave was thinning, not because the heroes had destroyed all of them, because the villains were pulling them back. They had gotten what they wanted. They had tested the new Nomu against Broly. They had seen him control himself. They had seen what triggers worked. And they had likely recorded everything. Aizawa watched the last Nomu retreat into the ridge shadows and felt anger rise, cold and clean. "This was staged," he said, voice flat. They wanted to see him under pressure. Endeavor's flames burned hotter. "Then next time we burn the stage." Hawks landed beside them, breathing hard. They also wanted footage. And that crystal thing? That wasn't random. Todoroki looked at the cracked rock face where Broly had slammed the absorber Nomu. "They're building things to handle him." Midoriya's gaze stayed on Broly. Broly stood alone again, chest rising and falling, eyes distant. He looked at the broken ground. Then he looked at the heroes. His expression wasn't anger. It was fear. Not fear of them. Fear that he would fail and hurt them anyway. A rescue worker approached with a trembling clipboard, like courage was something he could carry in paper form. We need to log structural damage, and Hawks stared at the clipboard, then at the shattered rock, then at Broly, and let out a short laugh that was mostly stress. "Buddy," he said, "if you hand him that right now, he might eat it." The worker blinked. "He eats paper?" Midoriya almost laughed, which surprised him. Todoroki's mouth twitched. Even Aizawa's eyes softened by a fraction. Broly didn't understand the joke, but he saw the tension break, even slightly. For the first time in the mountains, he didn't look like he was waiting for a cage to close. He looked like he was waiting for someone to tell him he didn't ruin everything. Midoriya stepped forward and spoke clearly. "We're going back," he said. "But you did it. You kept control. You moved the fight away. You protected people." Broly stared at him. Then, rough and low, Broly said one word. "Safe." Midoriya nodded. "Safer." Broly didn't smile, but he didn't look away either. And far away, in a hidden lab, Garaki replayed the footage of the cracked crystal chest and giggled with delight. "He learns," Garaki whispered. "He learns fast." All for One's voice came like silk. "Then we must make the next lesson hurt." Garaki tilted his head. "How?" All for One replied, "We make the cage look like kindness." And the mountain air, so clean and calm, suddenly felt like the quiet before a much bigger storm. 2 weeks passed, and nothing felt normal, but a new pattern started to form. Broly trained before sunrise. That was when the world was quiet. No helicopters, no shouting, no crowds that stared like knives. Just cold air, wet grass, and a wide-open field inside UA's strongest barrier zone. He moved in simple steps at first. Footwork, breathing, slow punches that cut the air without cracking the ground. Aizawa watched from a safe distance. He didn't praise, he didn't tease, he just paid attention. When Broly's shoulders tensed, Aizawa raised a hand. When Broly's breath sped up, Aizawa spoke one flat word. Slow. Broly didn't always understand the exact meaning, but he understood the goal. Less pressure, less surge, more control. Midoriya came too, sometimes. Not every day. Only when Nezu allowed it, and only if the training was stable. Midoriya kept his distance like a rule was painted on the ground. He held a notebook, but he wrote less than usual. Some things didn't fit notes. Like the moment Broly stopped mid-punch, closed his eyes, and forced his aura down with nothing but breathing. Or the moment Broly looked at a cracked piece of concrete and carefully set it back in place, as if he was trying to undo his own existence. Broly didn't talk much, but he began to understand more. He understood that Todoroki's calm voice meant safe. He understood that Hawks's jokes meant not a trap. He understood that Endeavor's stare meant, "I will stop you if you threaten people." And he understood that Midoriya's presence meant something else. Not control, not fear, just stubborn hope. The public didn't see these mornings. The public saw walls, rumors, and headlines. They saw the word alien show up in forums and get laughed at by people who needed to laugh. They saw the commission speak in calm, careful sentences about risk management. They saw repair crews working overtime near the convoy site, and they asked who would pay for it. One engineer actually filed a formal damage report against UA, and somehow the report landed on Aizawa's desk. Aizawa stared at it for a full 10 seconds. Then he walked out to the training field, held the paper up and said, "They want this signed." Midoriya blinked. "Now?" Aizawa nodded toward a fresh crack in the ground. "Especially now." Broly watched the paper move in the air, He stared at it like it was a strange animal. Aizawa walked over, put the clipboard on a concrete block, and placed a pen beside it. "Your mark," Aizawa said. "Apparently this is how society heals." Broly didn't understand the joke, but he recognized the ritual now. He picked up the pen with 2 fingers, like it might explode. He dragged a rough line across the bottom. Aizawa took the clipboard back, looked at the messy mark, and muttered, "Great. Now you're officially responsible for geology." Hawks, watching from above, laughed so hard he almost dropped altitude. Even Todoroki's mouth twitched once. Broly's eyes moved between them. The tightness in his shoulders eased a little. He didn't laugh, but the fear didn't bite as hard for a moment. That mattered. Hawks's job got worse every day. Not because the villains were attacking non-stop, because the pressure was coming from people in suits who believed fear could be managed with authority. The commission's team arrived at UA on a gray morning. They didn't come with shouting. They came with folders, contracts, and polite smiles. Hawks stood in the hall outside Nezu's office, leaning against the wall like he didn't care. But his feathers were tense. The lead representative stepped into the meeting room and placed a file down on Nezu's desk. "We have prepared a solution." Nezu's small smile stayed fixed. "A solution for whom?" "For everyone," she said smoothly. "We will formalize his status. Assign handlers, limit his movement, provide dedicated containment infrastructure." Aizawa, seated with arms crossed, said flatly, "That's a cage." The representative didn't blink. "It's safety." All Might's voice was calm. "Safety without dignity becomes cruelty." The representative opened the file and slid a single page forward. A contract with clean lines and heavy consequences. Hawks scanned it and felt his stomach turn. Special asset authorization, deployment eligibility, compliance measures. Endeavor's flames flickered along his shoulders, just a little. "You plan to use him?" "We plan to prevent disaster," she replied. "And if disaster can be prevented by controlled deployment, that is a responsible use of resources." Nezu's eyes narrowed. "He is not a resource." The representative's smile cooled. "Principal Nezu, you have had 2 weeks. The public is not calmer. The villains are not waiting. The longer he stays here, the more UA becomes a target." Aizawa's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "So you want to move the target?" "Yes," she said, "and we will." She stood and motioned to the door. 2 agents entered carrying a sealed case. Hawks straightened. "What's in the case?" "A safety device," the representative said. "A restraint collar, designed with top support engineers. Non-lethal. Emergency only." All Might's gaze hardened. "You built a collar." The representative opened the case just enough to show it. Metal. Smooth. Clean. The kind of clean that made it feel worse. Hawks felt cold anger. Not loud anger like Endeavor's. Quiet anger. Because he could already see the chain of events. If Broly saw that collar, he would not hear the words emergency only. He would hear a memory. Aizawa stood up slowly. "You will not show that to him." The representative's voice stayed polite. "We don't need permission." Nezu's smile didn't change, but his tone did. "If you trigger him on UA grounds, the liability will be yours." The representative paused for the first time. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. Hawks stepped in smoothly. "Let's do this smart. If you want cooperation, don't start with a collar. Start with a conversation." The representative looked at him. "And you will deliver that cooperation?" Hawks held her gaze. "I'll deliver stability, if you don't sabotage it." After a tense moment, she shut the case. "We will speak to him in 1 hour. Prepare him. Tell him this is not optional." Aizawa's eyes went flat. "If you say not optional to him, you'll regret it." She left. The door closed. The room stayed silent for a beat. Then Endeavor spoke, voice rough. They just declared war on trust. All Might looked at Nezu. Can we stop them? Nezu's tail flicked once. We can delay. We can argue. But we cannot remove their power. Aizawa said quietly. Then we remove their opportunity. Hawks' eyes sharpened. Meaning? Aizawa looked toward the training field outside. We make Broly choose before they force him. All Might's voice softened. He's not ready. Aizawa's answer was simple. The world doesn't care. Broly sensed the tension before anyone spoke to him. He was in the training field, breathing slow. Fists relaxed at his sides when he felt it. That tight movement, that careful walking, that feeling of people approaching with plans in their hands. His shoulders rose. Midoriya was already there, standing near the barrier line. When Midoriya saw Broly tense, he stepped forward just a little. Not close, just visible. Aizawa entered the field and stopped at a safe distance. Hawks hovered nearby. Todoroki stood off to the side, calm as a wall. Endeavor stayed back. He knew his presence could push Broly the wrong way. Aizawa spoke first. People from the government are here. Broly's eyes narrowed. Hawks tried to soften it. Not villains. Suits. Paper people. Broly didn't know the words, but he caught the tone. Midoriya spoke carefully. They want to move you. Broly's hands clenched. Midoriya lifted his palms, steady. We're trying to stop it. But they're serious. Broly's breathing grew heavier. The green aura flickered around his wrists like a warning. Aizawa kept his voice flat. They will come here. They will talk. We will be with you. Broly stared at Aizawa, then at Midoriya. His voice came out low. No cage. Midoriya nodded fast. No cage. Broly's jaw tightened. His eyes flashed with something sharp and old. Then, from beyond the field, a small buzzing sound appeared. A tiny drone. Not UA tech, not media. It hovered at the edge of the barrier zone like it was testing the line. Hawks' feathers snapped out and sliced at midair. The drone fell in 2 burning pieces. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Again. Hawks landed and picked up one half with the feather. Careful. They're watching every move. Midoriya's stomach dropped. Villains? Hawks' gaze stayed on the melted metal. Not just villains. Schemes. Broly stared at the broken drone, then at the sky. His aura flickered again. Not because he wanted to fight, because he could feel a net tightening. And then, in the far distance, a bright white line cut across the air. Small at first, then wider. Everyone froze. Midoriya's breath caught. No way! The line opened like the sky was being unzipped. A figure fell through it and tumbled onto the grass outside the barrier line. Not a monster. A young woman. Green skin. White hair. Wearing gear that looked like it belonged to a different world. She rolled, sprang to her feet, and shouted one word toward the field. Broly! Broly went still. His eyes widened like he had seen a ghost. The woman staggered forward, hands raised. Broly! It's me! Chilai! Hawks' feathers lifted, ready to shield. Aizawa's scarf shifted, ready to pull her back if she was a threat. But Broly's body changed. His shoulders dropped. His aura flickered and lowered. Midoriya stared, stunned. Broly took one slow step forward, like he didn't trust his legs. He spoke, rough and quiet. Chilai. The sound of his voice saying her name was different. Less sharp. More human. Chilai's eyes shone, and she laughed through shaking breath. Yeah, big guy, I'm here. Aizawa didn't relax, but he didn't attack. He watched Broly's reaction like it was the most important data point in the world. Nezu's voice crackled in Hawks' ear, urgent. Who is she? Hawks whispered back. Looks like his person. Chilai looked toward the heroes, then back to Broly, then spoke fast, like she was afraid time would run out. He's not from this world, she said, voice shaking but clear. He's not a quirk user. His power it's inside him. It grows when he gets angry, and he doesn't mean to hurt people. Midoriya swallowed hard. A different world. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. So the rift is real. Chilai pointed at the sky tower, which was already shrinking. I followed the signal. Something pulled us. Something's messing with space. Hawk's feathers twitched. Villains messing with space? Chilai's face tightened. I don't know your villains, but I know what it looks like when someone wants to trap a weapon. Broly's fists clenched at the word weapon. Chilai turned back to him and softened her voice. Hey, look at me. You're not a weapon. You're Broly. Okay? Broly's breathing slowed. Midoriya felt a strange mix of relief and fear. Relief, because Broly wasn't alone. Fear, because now the story wasn't just unknown strong guy. Now it was, the multiverse is cracking. And the people who loved control would not react calmly to that. Hawks' calm buzzed in his ear again. Hawks, Nezu said. Very quiet now. The commission is still here. Hawks looked toward the main building, where suited agents stood watching from a distance. He could almost feel their thoughts. Alien. Proof. Asset. He turned back to Chilai and Broly and forced his voice light. Okay, new rule. No more sky tearing without an appointment. Chilai blinked. What? Hawks smiled. Just, welcome to UA, I guess. Broly didn't smile, but he stood straighter. And for the first time since arriving, he wasn't staring at the ground like he expected chains to rise up from it. The commission didn't wait an hour. They came as soon as they heard the word alien. They crossed the training area with controlled steps, faces calm, eyes sharp. The representative stopped outside the barrier line. She looked at Chilai, then at Broly, then at the broken drone pieces. Her smile returned, tighter now. This changes the situation. Nezu appeared on a rolling screen carried by a support tech. His face was polite. His eyes were not. Indeed, Nezu said, it proves our earlier concerns. The representative lifted her chin. It proves we must secure them. Chilai stiffened. Secure? Hawk stepped forward. Let's all breathe before we start saying the word secure like it means help. The representative ignored him and looked directly at Broly. Broly, you will come with us. You will be protected in a secure facility. Broly's body tensed. The aura flickered at his wrists. Midoriya's heart pounded. Chilai moved one step closer to Broly, voice urgent. Don't do the cage thing. That's the worst move. The representative motioned, and an agent opened the sealed case. The collar gleamed in the morning light. Broly froze. His breath broke. A low sound rose in his chest. Not rage yet. Panic. The grass around his boots flattened. Small stones lifted. Midoriya's mouth went dry. No! Aizawa stepped forward, voice sharp. Close the case. The representative didn't. Emergency, only. Broly's eyes locked on the collar. The world narrowed. Pain at his neck. A voice commanding. His aura surged. Hawks' feathers shot out in a wide shield line between Broly and the agents, not to attack, but to block sight. Hey, put it away, right now! The representative's calm cracked. This is protocol. Endeavor's voice thundered from behind. Put it away before you get people killed. For once, the heat in Endeavor's tone wasn't pride. It was warning. The agent hesitated. Then, over the ridge beyond the training ground, a heavy impact sounded. Boom. Everyone turned. A black shape rose over the hill. Another absorber Nomu, larger than the last. Its chest crystal glowed like a dark star. And this time, it wasn't alone. More shapes followed. A wave. Too organized to be random. Hawks' eyes narrowed. They timed this. Nezu's voice sharpened through the screen. Evacuate immediately. Barrier up. Move civilians away from the perimeter. There were no civilians inside the training zone, but there were staff, rescue teams, and commission agents who suddenly realized that they were standing next to the biggest trigger in the world while monsters approached. The representative's eyes widened. This is an attack on government personnel. Hawks snapped. It's an attack on everyone. Welcome to the point. Broly stared at the approaching creatures. His aura flickered higher. The collar case was still open. Chilai grabbed the representative's wrist without thinking. Close it! Close it! The representative yanked her arm away. Don't touch me! Broly's aura surged again. Midoriya stepped in fast, voice loud but not sharp. Broly, look at me! Broly's eyes snapped to him. Midoriya swallowed and said the simplest true thing. We need you to help, not to break. Broly's chest heaved. The absorber Nomu roared and charged, and the ground shook with each step. Aizawa moved, scarf snapping out. Broly, away from them, away from the suits. Move the fight. Broly didn't answer. He turned his head toward the open valley beyond the training field, where there was nothing but rock and space. Then he made a choice. He stepped forward and walked past Hawks' feather shield, not toward the agents, but toward the monsters. He didn't rush. He didn't explode. He walked like someone walking into a job he didn't want, but would do anyway. The first absorber, Nomu, swung a massive arm. Broly caught it. The impact made the air pop. The Nomu's chest crystal flared, trying to pull at Broly's power. Broly's jaw tightened. He didn't blast. He stepped in close, locked his arms, and lifted. The Nomu's feet left the ground. Broly jumped. Straight up. He carried the Nomu into the sky, high enough that the ground suddenly felt far away and small. Then he angled toward the empty valley and threw the Nomu down into it. The creature hit rock and rolled, carving a trench. Broly followed, dropping after it like a meteor. Controlled, but heavy. He landed in the valley with a shock that stayed mostly contained to the empty space. On the training field, the rest of the heroes moved fast. Endeavor blasted heat toward the ridgeline, creating a wall of fire that kept the other Nomu from swarming into the training zone. Todoroki raised a thick ice dome over the commission agents and staff like a shelter, then reinforced it with layered ice ribs. Hawks' feathers formed a moving barrier line, guiding people to the safest bunker points. Aizawa focused on the Nomu's quirks whenever he could, shutting down enhancements long enough for Endeavor's blows to matter. Midoriya watched Broly vanish into the valley and felt his heart twist. Because Broly didn't just choose strategy, he chose responsibility. He chose to take the danger where it would hurt fewer people, even if it meant being alone again. Chilai stared at the valley, hands shaking. That's what he does, she whispered. He takes the hit. The representative, inside the ice shelter, looked pale. He is cooperating. Hawks shot her a sharp look. Yeah, imagine that. Down in the valley, Broly fought like a force of nature, trying to be careful. He moved fast, but he kept his strikes tight. He used grapples, throws, and heavy slams into rock, not wide blasts that would ripple outward. The absorber Nomu's crystal kept pulsing. It kept trying to drag his energy up so it could feed on it. Broly felt the pull and fought it with breathing, like Aizawa had taught him. Slow, deep. Hold it down. The Nomu punched him in the chest. Broly slid back, boots carving a line through stone. He didn't look hurt. He looked annoyed, and that was dangerous in a different way, because annoyance could become anger. The crystal flared brighter. A voice came from a hidden speaker somewhere in the valley, smooth as ever. You don't have to suffer for them. Broly froze for a heartbeat. The voice continued. They showed you the collar. They will chain you. You felt it, didn't you? Broly's aura flickered. His breathing broke. The voice softened. Come with me. I'll take you somewhere no one can cage you. Somewhere you can fight as much as you want. Somewhere you can be free. Midoriya, hearing the transmission through Hawks' comm relay, felt cold fear. That's him, Midoriya whispered. That's the one behind it. All for one. He wasn't here in person. He didn't need to be. He was trying to win with words. Broly's fists clenched. His aura rose. The absorber Nomu's crystal pulsed, hungry. Chilai grabbed Hawks's sleeve. "You have to stop that voice." Hawks's eyes narrowed. "Already trying." His feathers fanned out and dove into the valley cracks like a swarm of searching needles. Down below, Broly took a shaky breath. He remembered a different voice. A different promise. "Obey and you'll be safe." It had been a lie. Broly looked up, toward the ridge where he could barely see the training field in the distance. He could see tiny shapes. People. He could feel Midoriya's presence, like a small, steady light. And he could hear Chilai's words from earlier in his head. "You're not a weapon. You're Broly." Broly's jaw clenched. He spoke, rough and low, not to the speaker, but to himself. "No." The word came out like a stone dropping into water. The voice paused, then chuckled softly. "No?" Broly's aura trembled. He forced it down. He stepped forward and slammed his fist into the absorber Nomu's chest crystal, not with a blast, but with pure force. The crystal cracked. The glow flickered. The pull weakened. Broly hit it again. Crack. Again. The crystal shattered, spraying dark shards into the air. The Nomu staggered like it had lost its heart. Broly grabbed it by the head and drove it into the rock wall, once, hard. The Nomu went limp. The valley fell quiet except for Broly's breathing. Hawks's feather found the speaker hidden in a crevice and sliced it clean in half. The voice died. Back on the training field, the remaining Nomu started to retreat. Not because the heroes had wiped them out, because the purpose was over. They had shown the collar. They had pushed the trigger. They had tried the offer, and Broly had refused. That was information too. Hawks watched the last shape vanish over the ridge and muttered, "He's learning," and they hate it. The representative stepped out of the ice shelter slowly, looking shaken in a way she couldn't hide. She stared at the valley, then at Nezu on the screen. "You were right," she said quietly, forcing him increase his risk. Nezu's smile returned, small and sharp. "Thank you for finally noticing." She swallowed. "What do you propose?" Aizawa answered before Nezu could. "He stays under UA supervision, remote training, limited exposure, no collars, no surprise transfers." Endeavor added, voice hard, "And if you ever bring that case near him again, I will personally escort you out." Hawks looked at the representative. "You want control? Earn trust. That's the only control that works here." The representative's mouth tightened. "The public will demand assurances." All Might stepped forward. "Then we give them truth, not fear. We show them a man choosing restraint." Midoriya stared toward the valley entrance, waiting. A few minutes later, Broly returned. He walked back up the slope, dust on his arms, breathing heavy but steady. He didn't look triumphant. He looked tired. Chilai rushed toward him, then stopped herself just short, like she remembered humans had rules about space. "You did it," she said, voice shaking. "You didn't let them pull you." Broly looked at her, then at the heroes. Then he looked at the open collar case, still sitting on the ground. His aura flickered for a second. The representative, face pale, snapped the case shut and shoved it back to her agent. "Remove it." Broly watched it disappear. His shoulders loosened by a fraction. He met Midoriya's gaze. Midoriya nodded, small and steady. "You chose." Broly's voice came low, rough. "No cage." Midoriya answered, same as always. "No cage." And for the first time, the people who loved control had to accept something they hated. The most powerful force in the room could not be owned. It could only be met with honesty. Somewhere far away, All for One listened to the failed offer and smiled anyway. "Interesting," he said softly. Garaki giggled, annoyed. He refused. All for One's tone stayed calm. He refused today. That means he understands the game. He leaned back. So we changed the board. The villains didn't win. The heroes didn't defeat them either. But a new truth settled into the world like a heavy stone. Broly was here, and the future would have to bend around that. Morning came early and quiet. The training field was damp with dew. The sky was pale blue. No helicopters hovered. No cameras buzzed at the walls. Broly stood alone at the center of the grass. He closed his eyes and breathed in slow counts, like he was building a fence inside his own chest. In. Hold. Out. He opened his eyes and raised his hands. A thin green aura appeared around his arms, steady and small. It didn't crack the ground. It didn't lift stones. It just existed. Broly held it there for 3 breaths. Then he let it fade. He exhaled and looked up at the sky. For a moment, he didn't look like a disaster. He looked like a man trying to learn how to live. Midoriya watched from the barrier line, hands in his pockets, trying not to bounce with nerves. He didn't want to interrupt. He just wanted to remember this moment, because the world never recorded the quiet parts. Chilai stood beside him, arms folded, eyes sharp. She looked like she didn't fully trust this world yet. "I still don't like your government people," she muttered. Midoriya gave a small, tired smile. "Yeah, we don't always like them either." Aizawa walked onto the field like he always did, scarf loose, face sleepy, eyes sharp. He held a clipboard. Midoriya blinked. "No." Aizawa stopped near Broly and held it out without drama. "New form." Broly stared at it. Aizawa pointed toward a tiny crack near a training marker, barely visible. "You stepped too hard there yesterday." Midoriya covered his mouth to stop himself from laughing. Chilai looked confused. "You're joking." Aizawa's tone stayed flat. "I wish." Broly took the clipboard slowly. He looked at the blank line at the bottom. He didn't pick up the pen this time. He pressed his thumb down on the paper instead, leaving a dark print. Then he handed it back. Aizawa glanced at the thumbprint, nodded once, and tucked the clipboard under his arm like this was normal. Broly watched him for a second, then looked back at the field. Midoriya felt warmth spread through his chest, simple and strong. This was the theme in real life, not in speeches. Power didn't decide hero or villain. Choices did. Broly turned toward the open space and began another slow set of movements, steady as breathing. Behind the walls, the world kept arguing. Some people still feared him. Some people already told stories about him. And somewhere in the dark, someone planned new traps. But on the grass, under a quiet sky, Broly kept training. Not to become stronger, to become safer. And for now, that was enough.